Michelle, and today I just wanted to do a follow-up video. I've been wanting to make the follow-up video for a few weeks now since I released the first one, but I've just been really preoccupied with school and with traveling, and just a lot of stuff has come up. You know how it goes. I just got back from California actually a few days ago. I was in San Francisco for 4 days for a school-sponsored journalism convention, and I just wanted to shed light on some of the experiences that I had while I was there, and I also wanted to talk about the mass indoctrination that I discussed in my first video. So I'm just going to start with the second point first. So I just had a class. It's called Motivation and Emotion. It's one of my psychology requirements because I'm a double major in American history and psychology. And the class is talking about habits and how to form positive ones, how to get rid of maladaptive ones, and what drives emotion and motivation, basically. And today the professor played a plethora of videos for us to show how habits change and how social change is stirred. And the videos were, of course, very left-leaning. There was one by Greta Thunberg, there was a Black Lives Matter one, and one for the March for Life. So before I talk about the content of the videos, I just want to say that as a professor, I feel like you should show both sides of the political spectrum if you're going to discuss politics. I personally do not want to know what your politics are. If you're my professor, I don't think it matters whether you're a conservative or a liberal. We shouldn't know, because your purpose, your sole purpose, is to provide us with the necessary information so that we can draw our own conclusions. And when you have a professor telling you which way to vote or which policies you should focus on, that is very dangerous, and it drives mass indoctrination. It forces students to believe that one idea is right over another when they really haven't done their own research. A professor has a certain level of ethos, a certain level of responsibility and authority. And when a professor is pushing a certain point of view, it's very hard to ridicule that. So that's point number one. And I actually asked her about that. I asked her, why aren't you showing videos from the other side? Do you not think that they have anything inspirational or motivational to share? And her response was that she agrees with left ideology, so therefore she's showing that. And I don't think that's okay. I think that professors should do their part to encourage critical thinking and not just brainwash students. Now, on to the content of the video. So I specifically want to talk about the one on gun violence. So this was a typical gun rally. It was talking about the Sandy Hook massacre when all those students were killed. Tragedy. It's really very, very sad that somebody could commit such a heinous act. But the follow-up question is, how do we prevent it? And the left will tell you that the only way we can prevent it is by banning guns. But here's the problem with that. It's already illegal to kill people. That's already a law that's in the book. Murder is not legal. Criminals do not follow gun laws or any other laws for that matter because they are criminals. All right, when we tried banning alcohol, it didn't work. When we tried banning abortions, it didn't work. So what the hell makes you think that banning guns is going to work? Criminals do not follow gun laws. Let me say that again. They don't follow gun laws. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is by having a good guy with a gun. And this has been exemplified time and time again. Remember what happened in that Texas store? An armed civilian stopped a massacre from occurring. And this happens time and time again, but the media doesn't portray that because it doesn't go with their stance of anti-gun. And that's the sad fact of reality, that the news is there to draw an opinion nowadays. It doesn't tell you the facts. You have to figure out the facts on your own. And it's become like the Soviet Union. We cannot trust any of our news sources, whether it's a conservative news source, a liberal news source. They're all completely erroneous. It's ridiculous, and it's sad that people are buying right into it. Now, if you have a gun and you have a mental health issue or you're dangerous, of course you shouldn't have that gun. But you can't just institute a ban and infringe on the rights of people who are doing nothing wrong. It's not anybody else's business why I want a gun. I could want a gun because I think they're cool and I want to look at it, and that's my constitutional right. The only way to stop a tyrannical government is by having an armed populace. Now, before the Holocaust happened, for instance, one of the first things that Hitler did was he banned guns, because in order to conquer a nation, you have to disarm them. You can't fight against a nation that is going to fight back. You want to make people weak, and you want to demean them to the point that you can control them. And that's exactly what the liberals are doing in society today. They're trying to take people's guns away, make them more vulnerable so that they can keep their control. When you have a gun, you're the one in control. And I can tell you that if someone tries to rape me on the side of the street or somebody tries to break into my house, they're getting a bullet to the back of the head, because that's my constitutional right. I have a right to stand my ground. I have a right to self-defense. I have a right to life. and that gun protects my right to life. All of our other constitutional amendments are absolutely meaningless without the Second Amendment. That's why it's written in that order. It's a Second Amendment for a reason, because it protects all of the rest. Your First Amendment right will not be protected without guns. Your right to not have an illegal search and seizure will not be protected without guns. States' rights will not be protected without guns. Every single right that you have is only protected by the Second Amendment. You don't have to like guns. You don't have to own a gun, but don't tell me that I'm not allowed to own a gun. Just like I don't like abortions, I'm personally pro-life. I would never have an abortion regardless of the circumstances, but I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't have an abortion. People need to mind their own business and not get so emotional about things that quite frankly do not concern them. Another thing is that gun violence is the manifestation of a much deeper issue. We have a lot of fatherless homes in this country. We have a mental health crisis that nobody is addressing. We have a lot of issues that we really need to talk about, but instead we're focused on guns. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Sure, it'll stop bleeding for a few minutes and then you're gonna die, because that's the way it happens. In England, when they tried to ban guns, their knife violence rate completely increased. It skyrocketed up. 800 people die every year in pools. 40,000 people die every year in car accidents. But we're not banning pools. We're not banning cars. We're not banning any of that. Why? Because there's no political agenda with it. And it's the sad reality of the time that we live in. But we have to fight back, because guns save lives. They protect you from being raped or harassed or killed. And obviously, if someone misuses a gun and they murder someone, they should be charged to the highest degree of the law. But that doesn't mean that the government has the right to preemptively infringe on all of our rights. Now, in regard to the entire climate change argument, they make it seem like we're gonna die tomorrow because the polar ice caps are gonna melt and everyone's gonna die. Point number one is that 99.99999% of all the world's population no longer exists. That's not a result of global warming or global cooling or anything else. That's just the result of time going on and certain species not being able to adapt. That's natural selection. Point number two is that just because the temperature is going up does not mean that it's inherently going to get more arid. So if the temperature goes up by a few degrees, we're actually going to have more farmland. If that were to happen. The fact is that the world is on a natural cooling and heating cycle. It goes up in temperature, it goes down in temperature, and that's the way it's been since the beginning of time. A cow's fart causes more methane to be released into the air than anything that a human is doing. And if you want to talk about pollution and the oceans, go look at China, go look at India, because I promise you that Connecticut or any other state banning plastic bags is going to do absolutely nothing. Our food comes in bags, we have plastic straws, all of our drinks are in plastic containers, but banning plastic bags, that's really going to work. You know, all that's caused is for people to be walking around with piles of groceries this big. That's about it. It's a colossal inconvenience, and it's doing absolutely nothing for the environment. If you want to clean up the environment, please do. We can start a grassroots activist group and go and clean up the environment. But it has nothing to do with the federal government. Forcing people to do things does not work. The Good Samaritan law didn't work, because when you tell people to be nice, they're not going to be nice. People don't like being told what to do, and the government doesn't have the authority to tell people what to do. Their sole purpose is to protect our rights. That's the only reason it exists. It's a necessary evil, and a limited government exists to protect our constitutional rights and not infringe on them. That's about it. They have no other purpose. And one other thing that I just wanted to talk about was San Francisco. Now, let me tell you the amount of homelessness on those streets. Thank you, Nancy Pelosi. There's homelessness, there are needles, there is trash everywhere. This place is completely falling apart, and everyone there is a socialist. They think, oh, if we had socialism, we'd have a utopia and San Francisco would be saved. Not realizing that Democratic leadership is actually what brought them down. But, you know, the Democrats want a vulnerable population because then they can abuse them. They can get them to vote for them. Do you think that the Democrats would support illegal immigration if they didn't all vote for Democrats? Of course not. This is all a ploy, and anybody who doesn't see that, quite frankly, is just blind.